I know in the past there was a lot of focus on surrounding yourself with the right people, and I'm wondering how much you still endeavor to do that in the world that we live in today. So if you look at your own network, um, are the people you're surrounding yourself with the type of people that you feel you can leverage through their knowledge, you can leverage and gain yourself as well?
Because the way I feel, a lot of entrepreneurs, we know, if we're being honest with ourselves, we know what we need to do to get leads. We know what we need to do to get sales. We know what we need to do to get on podcasts like this. I need to do podcast outreaches, or I need to build relationships with podcasters like I did. So self-awareness and having clarity on who you are and what you want and all these things is behind everything I do every day, always, and always will be.
Mm.
It's the number one foundation. It's the number one first step of all growth and progress and movement. What I've seen from my experience, I'm not a personal trainer or anything, but I've been in the gym for as long as I can remember. The person with the systems will, in 3 months, achieve the results that the person
Mhm.
without them will achieve in sometimes 5 years. I'm not kidding. That's not an over exaggeration. I've seen it.
Hello, Team ET. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are today. It's great to have you join us for this discussion around, let's say, life's choices and the way that we deal with developing ourselves. And we have with us our guest, Mr. Daniel Hauge, and 24 years old, incredibly young compared to me, somewhat of a 40-year gap in actual fact, Daniel. Um, you're very much focused on personal development, and I know we're going to get into that, as well as how that supports your clients, who predominantly, I guess, are online entrepreneurs. So we're going to be bouncing around that topic a bit today. You have an interesting background. You've done a number of things already for such a young age, and I'm going to be curious to understand how you've managed to do it all. Given that I'm now 64, not 24. So I think we'll have some fun. With that, welcome to the ET project, Daniel.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. I have no doubt this will be a great conversation. I'm super excited.
Thank you. Well, let's start with the background. We always start with the background. Let's kick off there and share as much as you're comfortable sharing, from where it started for you to where you are now.
Absolutely, yeah. So I started off track in life, you could say. I had some trauma in the family, and this kind of pushed me off track. So very early, I started partying with the wrong people, started skipping school, started getting involved in a little bit of crime, a little bit of drug abuse, and these things would just uh, kind of gain momentum. They would just spiral in a very negative
Mm.
way. And so throughout much of my childhood, and certainly my early teens, the middle of my teens, I was on a very wrong, on a very uh, on a bad path, you could say.
Right.
And I realized that this was not going to end well if I continued down this path. In fact, I share this story. I was with some of my friends at a vacation house, summer house, whatever you call it. And these were the people that I was involved with in terms of drugs and crime. And we were just, the plan was to just party the entire weekend, and that's what we did. And I remember sitting in a circle at one of the nights we were there, and someone came up with a fun little game. He said, "Hey, let's try and guess how old we're gonna be. How far do you think you're gonna make it in life?" Some people said, "Well, I think I'll be 85." And some people said, "Well, I think I'll be 90." And it came to my turn, and then they looked at me, and I completely killed the mood because I just, with a stone cold face, I said 21. And everyone was like, "Oh, come on, Danny, what do you mean?" I said, "There's no way. The way I'm going now, just getting involved in like car crashes and crime and violence and drugs, and there's no way I'm making it past 21." And this scared me, and it was kind of a wake-up call. Not for me. I wasn't interested in life at all. To me, life didn't seem like a very interesting deal.
Right.
Now today, as a business owner, I'm all about deals, right? What's the value I get in exchange for the value I give? Life didn't seem to be a very good deal. Um, for me, life seemed to be a lot of sacrifices, a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, a lot of
Right.
um, but not a lot of good. So I wasn't super interested in life, but I had a mother, I had a little brother that I wanted to to stick around for. And so I decided that either I'm going to give up on life, which wouldn't be fair to them, or I'm going to build a life that would truly be worth living for me.
Mm.
And so I decided on the latter, fortunately, I mean. And so I started just going all in. I started getting jobs. I started working out. I started really consuming a lot of personal growth. And that's why I like to say, even though things like entrepreneurship have really, I have really gotten access to my heart in my later years. I love entrepreneurship. I love business. Personal growth is truly what started it all and what kind of saved me. I
Mm.
would wish for for Christmas and for birthdays. I would be wishing for personal growth books and all these things. And so that's when my journey started with building the life that I thought would be worth living.
You you make that transition sound almost a given, but I can't imagine that it was that easy to transition from where you were to the new person. Was it that easy, or did it, did you have support? I can imagine there was many struggles.
Yeah, I don't think any percentage of that was easy. I think it was very difficult, and much of it was also a little bit of back and forth, right? So I would
Mhm.
start taking care of my health, and then I'd kind of relapse into some
Right.
unhealthy patterns, and then I'd go back to the health. So a lot of overlap. So some people will say,
Mm.
well, if you were at this age when you started going all in on personal growth, why do you have stories of crime or drugs from this later age? There's an overlap. It's not like in the
Yeah.
movies, you just,
Yeah,
have this revelation and then the
I'm
next
sure.
scene, exactly everything's different. So, but that was when I started understanding what I was moving towards.
Mm.
And that was very important. And obviously a ton of mistakes, a ton of relapse and all of that, but it increasingly, when you have like a graph, it'll go down sometimes, but there's a
Yes.
trend.
Right.
And the trend was very clear that I was building a better life and I was getting happier, I was getting healthier and
You seem to have made a decision quite early, though, around, I guess, around 16 or 17, looking at the age of your business, which is passion for achievement. You started that around 16, I think, if I understand correctly.
Yes, so what happened was I started very quickly seeing some positive results from personal growth, and I wanted to share those findings. I didn't want to step forward and say, "Look at me, I'm the expert. I have 40 years of experience," and because I wasn't the expert, and I still
Right.
wouldn't call myself the expert with 40 years of experience because that would be tricky when I'm 24, right? Having 40 years of experience. And so what I wanted to do was step forward and say, "Look, this is where I was, and I'm certainly not where I want to be yet, but I have moved in this way
Mm.
and this way and this way. What helped me was this thing and this thing. You can try it out." And I would just write these things in like free PDFs or in free videos. I just to share it,
Mm.
not so much like an expert, but more as a student that liked to share what was working for me because it had so massive effects on me. And then that's when I started Passion for Achievement. I bought the domain and stuff like that, but I wouldn't really say it was like a full-blown business for the first at least. And that's
Mm.
difficult once again because I go back and forth, and then sometimes maybe I was profitable enough to do it full time, and then maybe a bunch of years after that I had to supplement with some job income, stuff like that.
Right.
Anyway, I wanted to share what was working with me, and that's for me, and that's basically what I've been
Mm.
doing ever since.
Yeah, fantastic. And I read somewhere um, that as you were working in this direction, you become obsessed with studying successful people, and you were reading about wealthy, influential people. I'm wondering, in that period, in that time, was there any one particular influencer that had a major impact on you?
That is a great question. I wouldn't say there was one person that had a impact over it all. I would rather say I had one person that was really good for this and one person that was really good for that.
Right.
So I would say people like Brendan Bashad and Tony Robbins, they were kind of
Mm.
the first people that I got involved with personal development wise.
Right.
Then I followed Grant Cardone a lot for like his wealth creation ideas and then kind of I kind of branched a little bit out from that as well. And I think just so a lot of people on, especially on podcasts and stuff, they will ask me, and it's a great question. So I understand why they ask it. What's the one book that you read that changed everything? Or what's the one mentor, the one coach? For me, a lot of times it wasn't that I read 100 books and then five of them were incredible and the rest were useless. For me, it was I read 100 books and 6% of that book and 3% of that book and 11% of that book
Mm,
really made the difference. So
right.
yeah, and also what I really like to do is not just consume information, but be very intentional about what I'm consuming. So if I am focused on scaling my company and I know that marketing is my bottleneck, then I'll focus a lot of my efforts on bettering myself in terms of
Mhm.
marketing. If it's my
Yeah.
productivity that's lacking, I'll focus on that. So, and that's something I've gotten increasingly better at with time. I used to just read and consume and study everything that could possibly be of some kind of value, but now I'm more intentional about it. So that's good.
Yes. I think we've all been down that rabbit hole to some extent. I'm 40 years your senior, and I fall for that trap every once in a while. The next shiny object comes along, and I think, oh, I should look at that, and we go down there. In terms of influences, or maybe to use the right term, mentors or coaches, do you have people that you currently lean on for support in what you're doing?
Yes. So right now I'm a very big fan of Alex Hormozy. He doesn't probably maybe he doesn't have the life that I want because it's working from dusk to dawn every day. I like
Hmm.
to have a little bit more of a lifestyle that also gives me the other areas of my life that I feel like are important, stuff like that. But I think his
Yep.
views on business are really, really good. There's a guy that I actually followed for a lot of years when I first got started with entrepreneurship called Peter Voog. He's not as big as many of the top business people, but he has this mix of like entrepreneurship and lifestyle design and like personal development. And that was when I got started thinking of myself as this link between personal growth and entrepreneurship. Because in the beginning, when I started Passion for Achievement, I wanted to talk about everything personal growth related,
Mm,
everything to everyone. So I wasn't specific on my audience or my on the problems I was solving or anything like that. I just wanted to talk about
right.
personal growth. But with time, as I got increasingly more interested in entrepreneurship and being an entrepreneur myself and understanding the struggles from that, I started seeing myself as this link between personal growth and the high performance, the productivity stuff, and the business side of things.
Mm,
And I think I learned that from Peter Book, yeah.
okay, excellent. We'll probably jump around a little bit here, but maybe the audience probably doesn't know what it is you're doing, or what your current interest is within this space. So maybe if you can fill that gap as a starting point, and we'll build from there.
Absolutely. So like I said in the beginning, it was just all kinds of personal growth for everybody. With time, I started noticing that a lot of my clients and customers and the ones that were getting the best results were all entrepreneurs. And so I started focusing more on those also because I'm an entrepreneur myself. And so I can relate a little bit better to their struggles and their challenges in terms of performance versus if someone is a lawyer or a banker. So I focused on helping entrepreneurs, more specifically online entrepreneurs. Oftentimes
Right.
they're at the seven figure mark. So it's not like 80 employee companies, but more
Mm,
so. Yeah. And what we do is we help them perform basically. So we help them with their productivity, their focus, their energy levels, their systems or routines. How are they working on what and how and when? And then
mm,
also what we do is we set things up in business and outside of business in a way that we can eliminate or at least drastically reduce things like burnout, overwhelm, stress, confusion, lack of focus. So I believe in business, it's very often, if not always, input equals output. So what you put in is what you'll get out.
mhm.
And what I like to say is we basically help you scale the input.
Yeah. So you amplify it so that the result you receive is greater as a result, right?
Exactly, because the way I feel, a lot of entrepreneurs, we know if we're being honest with ourselves, we know what we need to do to get leads. We know what we need to do to get sales. We know what we need to do to get on podcasts like this. I need to do podcast outreaches, or I need to build relationships with podcasters like I did with you. So oftentimes we know what we need to do. And I think sometimes in entrepreneurship, we just talked about shiny new object syndrome and stuff like that. We all know it when we're entrepreneurs and you're scrolling on Instagram or wherever you're scrolling, you're bombarded with ads that says, hey, try this new Facebook strategy. It is giving us a 56 times ROAS right now. Or try this new way to generate leads. Or are you still doing email marketing? You should stop and do this thing instead. Oftentimes we know what we need to do. We're just not doing enough of it, or we're not doing it well. And so that's where I come in, and I try to look at my experience as a business person, but also my experience as the kind of habit, productivity, performance dude, and see how can we make it so that whatever you're doing for your lead generation, we can do that 10x or 50x in a way that is sustainable, effective, scalable, all these things. So, yeah.
Right, right. I know in the past there was a lot of focus on surrounding yourself with the right people. And I'm wondering how much you still endeavor to do that in the world that we live in today. So if you look at your own network, are the people you're surrounding yourself with the type of people that you feel you can leverage through their knowledge you can leverage and gain yourself as well?
Absolutely. So I'm very, very conscious about who I spend time with and who I take advice from and who I surround myself with. Obviously, a lot of it these days are online,
Yep.
which can be okay, but I also try to get some actual network, go to events and conferences and stuff like that. So, but
Right.
yeah, I would say I'm in a pretty good place. I mean, the friends I had back then, they are, without going in too much detail, they are at the moment they're either dead, or they are in rehab, or they are sitting in prison for like 10, 12-year sentences. That's the people I
Right.
hung out with back then. Today, the people I hung out with, they're like one of them is on the national team for biology and is doing the Olympics for biology.
Mm,
And he's like a bioengineer, a bio entrepreneur and all these things. And so my friends today are people that when I'm with them, I learn, and hopefully they learn sometimes as well. But also I'm inspired, and I always want to be more.
mm.
And same thing when I'm dating, stuff like that. I want to be more from
Okay.
having this person in my life. And so I'm very conscious about who I surround myself with.
Yeah, there was a great quote I read somewhere related to you, and you speak about it, but it comes from a Chinese philosopher, Zhang, I think. And I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember the whole thing, but it's something like you can't discuss the ocean with a well frog. His thinking is limited by the space that he's living in. And I love that expression because it really summarizes what we're talking about at this moment, but also my experience in life as well. If you surround yourself with the people that will help you grow, then you will grow as well. But if you surround yourself with people that don't have that same perspective and don't have those same interests, then you're going to spend a lot of your time being challenged, perhaps, or questioned, and they just won't see the vision that you have. And I think this is one of the fundamentals for me throughout my career as well. So I like that.
Yeah,
So,
I love that as well. And so one of the things I talk about a lot is, and this is a very simplified statement, but I like the theory behind it, which is your circumstances or your environment determine what you do,
mhm,
but you determine your environment. So, and that sounds like a cliche Instagram quote, but I really like it
yep,
because much of what you do is determined by what you hear. What are you listening to every day? What are you working on every day? What are you eating? How are you sleeping? Who are you, like, are you at a cluttered desk or not? And for some people, they're more productive with a cluttered desk, and for some, but anyway, your environment is a very big predictor for how focused you can be and for how many distractions will be there and of how inspired you are and all these things. And so we humans don't actually we make a lot of decisions, but not as many as we think we do. A lot of it is just subconscious, and it's like it's basically our environmental circumstances that determine a lot of the things for us. But we can decide to set up the circumstances and the environment. So imagine you're
mm,
going to the grocery store, and you're extremely hungry, you can still decide not to buy any candy or biscuits or bad foods, but you're very more likely to do that because you're hungry. But you decide if you're hungry or not when you go to the grocery store, right? So you
Yes.
can set yourself up. And one of those things, um, environment-based things, are the people that you surround yourself with. So make sure that's set up.
Yeah. And, to your point about the grocery store, you have to shift from the subconscious to the conscious and make that decision intentionally, right? You
Mhm.
have a expression somewhere I read that says life is 3% circumstances, 97% what you make of it. And I fully support that as well. There's a lot of study around the concept of we live on autopilot 45 to 95% of our life. And it's only when we're very consciously focused on the things that are important that we choose with that conscious state rather than that subconscious mind. So yeah, it's really interesting topic. We could talk about that for a long time. You used to talk, and I'm curious if you still do, Daniel, used to talk about the importance of self-awareness. How does that factor into where you are today and the people that you're working with?
Yes, so self-awareness and having clarity on who you are and what you want and all these things is behind everything I do every day, always, and always will be.
Mm,
It's the number one foundation. It's the number one first step of all growth and progress and movement. The
yeah.
reason I started talking about it a little bit less is because people don't find it sexy or interesting, but it is very necessary. So I'm glad you asked. So when I decided back then that I was going to build a life worth living, well, the
Mm,
question that comes to mind is, what is a life worth living? What
yeah.
does that look like? And so I had to get very clear on my values. And so just to quickly go over what that could be, you could say, okay, my values in life are things like freedom. I want to have self-respect. I want to have my health. I want to have yada, yada, yada. And then you can dive deeper and you can say, okay, freedom. What is freedom for me? Because for some people, maybe financial freedom is like 90% of their overall view of freedom. For
Mm,
others, maybe it's a freedom of time.
yeah.
Or, for me, a big part of freedom is freedom of location. Everything I've done today and will do today, I could have done from a cafe in Istanbul or a hotel in Tokyo. And that's important to me. And that's why I designed my life and business in a way where I would have freedom of location. So this is very
Mm,
important for every human being. So to know your values and to know what you actually want and get as specific as you possibly can. So when someone comes to me and they say, hey, Daniel, I would like to have more money. Cool. Here's $3. You've won.
yeah.
What's next? You know, what I would like to hear is, hey, Daniel, I would like to go from 60K per month in revenue to 80K per month. And I'd like to have a profit margin at 83% by doing this and that. That's
Mm,
so let's get a little bit more clear on what exactly we want.
right.
And so, like I said, it's important for every person, but it's very important for business people in general and for leaders in general, because I see people that started companies because they wanted, let's say, freedom was the main value that they wanted to gain from their business. But now they've built an office culture that requires them to be in the office 60 hours per week. So now they're actively building something that is taking them away from what they truly wanted and what they truly want. And this will cause burnout and stress and all these things. So when I
Yeah.
work with clients and we're doing the reduce burnout, reduce stress work, a lot of it is actually these values here. And then also as a leader, when you understand how values work, you will have some salespeople that the number one thing for them is they want to work from home so they can be with their daughter. And the next salesperson, he's like a 22-year-old, he just wants to make a bunch of money. Well, you give him some overtime so he can actually make that money, right? So you give people what they value, and you'll see their productivity, their inspiration, and
Yeah.
their initiative, all these things will just completely increase. So I think being self-aware and understanding your values, understanding your
Mm.
company's values, and understanding your people's values is just such an important thing.
So in essence, clarity. So clarity, I guess, is like the overarching factor, but
Yes.
self-awareness. I with the programs we deliver, we say self-awareness is step one. However, self-awareness provides you the knowledge, clarity. if you don't do anything with it, then nothing changes. And we share a lot of common quotes, and one of them is from Bruce Lee, right? And he talks about knowing is not enough, we must apply. So for me, step one is self-awareness. Step two is self-regulation. So once I know who I am, what I want to achieve, then I have to do something with that. And that then sets you off on the journey. Not saying you always do the right thing, but at least you're doing something and you're building that momentum. Yeah. I guess you agree with that approach.
1,000%. And you said the password, which was momentum. Every time someone says that, I get so happy, and I could talk about that for a year. Momentum is huge, and so and the self-regulation term is a really good term for that. But that is absolutely correct. Once you know where you're going,
Yeah.
and you know where you are. So imagine you have a GPS, right? You're on Google Maps or whatever. You put in the location of where you're looking to go. So we have your destination, but we also need your starting point for us to actually have a route, right? If I say right now I want to go to Manhattan, and the GPS doesn't know where I'm starting from, it doesn't matter. So we need to know where we are and where we'd like to go, and that's what we talked about: the self-awareness, the clarity, all of that. And now we got to do something that actually bridges the gap. I call it very, very creative. I call it bridge the gap activities, and and these activities, if possible, we can try and systemize those, right? And so systemizing these activities could be, let's say outside of business, let's say you're looking to build a better life, a higher quality of life, and you identify one of the values that matter to you is health. Cool. Now we dive deeper into the health value. Cool. What actually matters for me in terms of health? What gives me the health value? Well, one of them is having more muscle mass. Let's say you're a young man like me, you want to have some muscle mass. Maybe that goes for everyone actually would like to have some muscle. Anyway, I know what kind of muscle I want to have. I know what I have right now. What is something I could do that will bridge the gap? These bridge the gap activities are not hard to find in this day and age. Okay, we have more information than we've ever had. I promise the lack of information is not going to be what's going to hold you back. If you Google, you will have 500 exercises you can do to build muscle mass. So that part is not the tricky one. The tricky one is doing it consistently and sustainably and all that. So once we have an activity, we want to systemize it. And the example I give is if you have someone that says, I like to go to the gym when I have the energy and the time and it fits my schedule and the stars are aligned perfectly and everything is just great, then I'll go to the gym. You have someone else that goes, I'll lift weights for 40 minutes out on my way home from work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. What I've seen from my experience, I'm not a personal trainer or anything, but I've been in the gym for as long as I can remember. The person with the systems will in 3 months achieve the results that the person without them will achieve in sometimes 5 years. I'm not kidding. That's not an over exaggeration. I've seen it. And the same thing in business. A lot of people will go through their days and okay, now I'll check a little bit of email. Okay, I guess now I'll maybe reach out to 2 podcasts. Oh, now I have a client call. Okay, now I'll do this and that. What I really like to do is see if we can optimize a little bit of that. I know you can't always go, okay, I only want to have calls here or here, but when I wanted to get on podcast, what I said was, okay, I'll spend an hour every morning reaching out to podcasts. That's the system, right? So I like to systemize the activities that will get me closer to where I want to go.
Right. I leverage a similar approach when we talk about our daily routines. So how do we standardize, systemize our routines? How do we make as much of it habitual so we don't even have to think about it and it happens, as a matter of just going through the routine. So all of those factors sort of feed into each other, I think. So it sounds like we're very much on the same page. So we're looking at the how-to more so than just what it is we want to achieve and why. So we're looking at how to do it and put it into practice, right? So, yeah, very good.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things that I was reading about, not in relation to you, but probably relevant to us in general and what we're doing as entrepreneurs, is that there's a forecast or a projection that by the year 2027, some 50+% of the workforce will be either freelance, contract, or entrepreneurial based, which is a huge huge progression from where it is now, but also where it was. If you were talking to some of those people that were gearing up to move in this direction, any sort of advice you would give them about what do they need to be thinking about? Where should their head be at the moment about thinking about becoming an entrepreneur as they look at the world today with this hugely rapid, shifting, technological-based world we live in? What should they be thinking about at the moment, do you think?
Right, that's a great question. So first I'll go a little bit broad and general and then go a little bit more specific. So the broad and general is understand just the things we already kind of talked about. Understand who you are and what exactly you're trying to build. A lot of people will, kind of like we tell people not to marry the first person that touches their arm. A lot of people will marry the first business that they see a Facebook ad for. So, okay, I saw an ad for Forex trading and so that's what I'll do. Or I saw an ad for e-commerce, so that's what I'll do. I would really make the foundation, like for me, I was asking myself like 100 questions per day for years when I started in the entrepreneurship. I was like, why is this important to me? Why is this not important to me? How would I do this instead? And why did that ad feel bad for me? Well, this ad I was really impressed by, and just really getting that clarity. So that's the first thing. And then understanding that slow can be faster than fast. What I mean by that is the fast route is eat this thing and you'll eat 20 pounds in a day, or buy my course and you will have a $10,000 per day business from tomorrow, or do this thing, you'll be a gazillionaire next week. It never works.
Yep.
And even if it actually were to work, you wouldn't learn any proper skills or any like valuable lessons from it, and it wouldn't be sustainable. The foundation would be made of sand, and it doesn't work. So you gotta be able to look a little bit more long term, and that's different from having a job. If you have a job right now, you go in, you work for 8 hours, you'll have that pay either immediately or you'll have it by the end of the month. It's different for entrepreneurs. You'll have to work sometimes for years without seeing a tangible result. So that be prepared for that. The more practical stuff, I would urge you to follow. There's a book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, I believe. It's a really good book. And the idea is basically there's one thing right now you could be doing that would matter more than everything else. And everything that is not that thing is a distraction. So when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, for me, the first many years, I would perfect the color theme in my logo. I would be writing the 30th email in my autoresponder before having a single lead. I promise you, don't do that. That's not the way. Just identify what's the number one thing I could do right now. And if you don't have an offer, the number one thing is to, in my opinion, find out what you're gonna offer, who you're gonna help with how. Once you have that, start talking to people so you can have some kind of leads or conversations. Once you have that coming in, well, then you optimize your sales process. And then once you actually have a good enough sales process to have sales, well, then now you will have fulfillment, right? So how do I fulfill whatever I'm offering in optimal way? How do I systemize that? Once you have that and you start having a little bit of a team, now I have operations, right? But if you start out by trying to perfect the operations that you will need in 8 years when you have 40 employees. That was literally my thought process. I would be going on walks and I'll be like, okay, in 12 years, I will launch an app and this is going to be the name for it. Do the number one thing that will actually get you closer to what you're trying to do.
Where is your vision at the moment for, I don't know how far ahead you look now, but 3 years, 5 years, 2 years? What is it you're looking towards at the moment?
Right now, I'm putting almost all my focus into my personal brand. So if you go and look at my personal profiles right now on social media, I have close to 0 followers. I think I have 8,000 followers on Facebook and something like that. But other than that, there's nothing because I've always kind of been hiding behind passion for achievement. It was always passion for achievement, my passion for achievement products and logos and websites and ads and it was great because I wanted to build a company. But now
Yes.
I'm really looking to focus on the personal brand more. So I will go hard on content creation, on media appearances, just like podcasts and stuff like that. So that's the main focus for the next couple of years.
Right.
And
Excellent.
yeah.
Yeah. I know when we look at entrepreneurialism, it's such a broad field. Is there an area that you focus on when you meet with new clients? Like, how do you get them focused and centered after you meet them? Is there a specific process you follow?
Yes. So first of all, we always get clear on what is it, why are you here basically? Why do you come to me? So they come to me because there's something they would like to be doing or to have
Mm-hmm.
that they don't have or that they're not doing. So we
Right.
understand that gap, right? And sometimes it'll be like business related, it'll be like I don't have enough leads. Then
Yes.
we'll identify why and we'll build systems around, okay, what's something you can just pour your effective work hours into that will solve this problem.
Mm.
But other times it's more so about, look, I actually I enjoy my results in business right now, but my life is just crumbling. I have burnout, stress, I'm overwhelmed, I can't sleep, all these things.
Yeah.
Then we would look at more, once again, the gap. We would look at what would your ideal business or your ideal work life look like and
Mm.
how's it currently set up. We'll look to systemize more stuff and we'll look to, so there is a framework, but the steps vary a little bit depending on what the pain points are. But we always start with clarity, always. And then basically we identify what are the activities that would help our situation. Then we
Mm-hmm.
build systems around it. And then we leverage momentum, which, like I said, you touched on that earlier. I love that word
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
momentum is huge. So we like to just get started, just do something that we have identified will actually solve the problem, but we just do very little of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because especially if you're already stressed or overwhelmed, you don't want the coach telling you to do 4 hours of this every day. We just do a little bit of it. And then once that's dialed in, so there's a system, we know we're doing something that's effective and will give us the result that we want, you can scale that. So
Mm. Yeah, very good. Are you you're talking about content development and trying to grow your personal brand? Are you looking at books or anything at the moment, like writing a new book or program development or anything?
yeah, so the book that I wrote, The Cure for Mediocrity, I would really like to revise and to do a second edition of. And when I do, I will
Mm.
promote it heavily and see if I can kind of pay back to the followers that have been following and the customers that have been buying from me for years and stuff and kind of give that back, but also reach new people. I think that will be good for my brand, but it won't be right now. So right now it's just growing the social media channels and basically sending everyone to either my free trainings, my free PDFs, and my daily content. Obviously, you can join as well for free. And then if people
Right.
want to work with me, we can certainly talk about that as well. That would be like a hybrid of a course with me as a coach on the side for that.
So, what is the best place for people to follow or to find you? Which social media?
The best place is undoubtedly my Instagram at I
Instagram.
am
Yeah.
Daniel Hauge. So at I am Daniel Hauge, you can obviously get daily content that is tailored to entrepreneurs. I'll be my main focus when doing content is to increase your productivity, your effectivity, or your systems in and out of business while
Right.
reducing things like burnout and overwhelm. So basically, in very general terms, scale your business while feeling better and living a life worth living.
Mm.
So the content will be there. There'll also be free stuff. So like free PDF on clarity, like we talked about today, or other cool
Yeah.
things. And then of course on Instagram as well, you can just DM me if you have any interest in having my help or have me look at your situation. I'll give you some pointers on what I think could help you. Maybe we have a have a talk about what could help you. But everything happens at Instagram at I am Daniel Hauge.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, as usual, we'll link in our show notes with all of those areas. Daniel, anything we should be talking about today that we haven't touched on? Any specific message you'd like to give the listeners?
One thing that I've changed my mind on recently, which I think is really good because we are talking a lot about personal growth and optimization and increasing productivity and these things. And
Mm.
that can also be a bit of a trap. It can be a bit addicting because you always want to improve a little bit. And that's okay. But one thing I've recently changed my mind on is this idea of optimization
Right.
versus maximization. So I've
Okay.
always been an optimizer. I always wanted to kind of have my machine whether that's me personally or it's my business. I always wanted to optimize it, make it better, make it more productive, make it more efficient. And I still do that. But my problem before was I was optimizing it to have the most optimized machine. So I'll come back to that in a minute. But we all know the quote, maybe we do. I love the quote. If I have 6 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend the 4 hours sharpening my axe. And I'm still gonna sharpen my axe.
Yeah.
Okay, I am. But I used to sharpen my axe to have the sharpest possible axe. Now I'm sharpening my axe to chop down the most amount of trees.
Right.
So, and this is actually from Hauge. He said, everyone is trying to get the most bang for their buck, but sometimes it's just about getting the most bucks. And I really like that. So the difference is, once again, I no longer aim to have the sharpest axe. I aim to chop down the most amount of trees. So I'll still sharpen my axe. I'll still get my sleep. I'll still eat right. I'll still make sure my values are aligned with what I'm doing. I'll still do all the productivity hacks, all these things. But the
Yes.
goal is now to produce actual results. It has to be tied to something. It has to be tied to more leads, more sales, more value, more impact, more health, more muscle mass, less body fat. It has to be tied to a specific result, and it should be for the results' sake. And the reason I'm saying this, because you said over the next few years, a lot of entrepreneurs will emerge, and a big bunch of those will get addicted to learning about things and optimizing their marketing over and over and over again. And you will meet them and you will say, hey, you've been marketing for 2 years. How many leads do you have? Well, I've got 3, but I still need to optimize this one headline or whatever. Optimize, but do it with intention to actually achieve the result that you want.
Guilty as charged, by the way. So one of the learnings that I have is exactly that point, right? So for me now, my realization is I need to do in parallel. So I'm one of those people. I'm a lifelong learner, and I feel there's a void if I'm not continually making that improvement. So I don't want to stymie or stop that process entirely. But what I used to do was use it as an excuse, to your point. And now what I need to do is, or what I am focused on doing, is now putting a parallel focus and saying, okay, I'm still going to be doing this, but in parallel, I need those results. I need to be focused on the target and taking action, massive action, building that momentum towards achieving those targets that we set. And I think that's great advice. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You just reminded me to update my latest targets progress. So yeah, very good. Daniel, been great connecting with you. I have to say I'm a little bit in awe that at the age of 24, I'm trying to think what I was doing at 24, but I certainly didn't have the clarity around business or the clarity of mind that you have. Particularly if you look back over your life story, in such a short period, you've really transformed yourself to where you are now. I'm sure there's still a long way to go, but you're on that journey and you're cutting a path that so many other people have never gone. So yeah, kudos to you and all the best for the outcome. I enjoy watching as you progress. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And I'm extremely grateful to be here and share my message and my story. So thanks for that.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.